In this video, you're not just going to hear about monkeys. You're going to live with them for a little while. We're going to count down 5 monkeys humans most often dream about keeping as pets, and gently show what happens when that dream meets reality. From number 5 all the way down to number 1, we'll move from the leafy wild places where these monkeys actually belong, into the rooms and hallways of a human home that was never really built for them. If you like drifting off to strange, true animal stories, a quick like or even a subscribe helps more than you know. And I'm always curious who's listening, so if you feel like it, let me know in the comments where you are in the world, and whether you're on team monkey as a pet or team monkeys belong in the wild. There's no judgment here, just honest curiosity. For now, you don't have to do anything except get comfortable. Let your shoulders soften. Maybe dim the lights a little, or let the screen glow be the only light in the room. This is your time, and you are completely safe where you are, because the monkeys we're about to talk about are not in your house. They're inside a story. Across this video, you'll meet 5 of the monkeys humans most often try to turn into pets. At number 5, we start with a tiny tamarin with a serious hairstyle. At number 4, there's a long-limbed canopy acrobat built for flying through trees. At number 3, a lively, shoulder-sized troublemaker. At number 2, clever little house helper you've seen in movies and viral clips. And finally, in first place, a miniature, finger-sized primate barely taller than your hand. You might already have a favorite in that list. You might even have a quiet picture in your head of one of them sitting on your couch, riding in your car, or clinging to your hoodie as you walk around the house. We're going to keep that picture in mind and slowly turn it around so you can see it from the monkey's point of view as well. Along the way, you'll find out which of these monkeys can live close to 20 years, which one can leap several meters through the air without thinking about it, which one will scream at you before sunrise if it feels ignored, and which one is so social that taking it away from its troop is a little like taking a human away from every friend and family member they've ever known. We won't rush. We'll move through a full, gentle day, from waking up to feeding, to play, to frustration, to sleep. We'll spend part of that day in the wild, where each monkey's brain and body actually make sense, and part of it in a human home, where those same instincts start to collide with furniture, rules, and expectations. You might think you already know which monkey would make the best pet. Tiny must mean easy. Friendly must mean safe. Clever must mean helpful. Before this video is over, we'll test each of those assumptions one by one. For now, I want you to imagine something simple. You open your eyes, and you are not in your bedroom. You're lying in a narrow bed in a small jungle sanctuary, somewhere warm and green. The air is thick and slightly sweet, like overripe fruit. The first thing you notice is the sound. Not cars or fridges or distant traffic, but a layered tapestry of calls. Soft bird notes, a distant rush of water, the steady pulse of insects, and under it all, the curious chirps and trills of monkeys starting their morning. Your own bed is just a thin mattress on a wooden frame. The sheet under your hand feels a little rough, and the air against your bare arms is already warm. Even though it's early, there's no glass in the small window beside you, just a simple screen. And through it, you can smell damp earth, leaves, and the faint, sharp tang of animal musk. You sit up slowly. Your muscles feel heavy, as if you arrived here yesterday and your body is still adjusting to the travel and the change in air. When your feet touch the floor, you feel cool boards under your toes and a faint vibration when something jumps or runs across the roof. Light, quick footsteps, then gone. Outside your room, someone calls out in a language you don't quite catch, and a metal bowl clinks against another. Breakfast for the animals, maybe breakfast for you. For a moment, you just listen. The monkeys outside sound busy, as if they've been awake longer than you have, already making decisions about food, safety, and play. Today, you're here for one reason: to meet 5 species of monkey that humans, again and again, insist on bringing into houses and apartments and backyards. 5 monkeys that look small enough, cute enough, or clever enough to fit into a human life without too much trouble. Before you leave this sanctuary, you'll have followed each one of those monkeys through a quiet, ordinary day in its own world. And then, just in your imagination, you'll bring each one home and see what happens when its wild instincts collide with a human house. For now, you swing your legs fully over the edge of the bed and stand. The boards under your feet feel smooth and a little cool. When you walk to the doorway and slide it open, warm air rushes in, carrying a thicker wave of scent. Damp wood, ripe fruit, a hint of metal from the enclosures, and that same sharp animal tang you caught through the window. The corridor outside is simple, sun-faded wood with narrow railings to your left. The path leads toward the main building and the humans who run this place. To your right, it opens out toward the trees and the clustered islands of green where the monkeys live. You turn right. With every step, the sounds separate and become clearer. A soft, bird-like chirp from somewhere low to the ground. A quick, rising trill from higher up a branch creaks, and something small rustles through leaves, then goes still. You can't quite see any animals yet, but you can feel eyes on you, curious, cautious, measuring how close you'll come. The path curves gently, and thin morning light slips through the canopy in dusty beams. Ahead, you see the first enclosure, a tangle of branches, ropes, and platforms, all built up into the air like a playground made of living wood. A small shape moves there, fast and precise, pausing just long enough for the light to catch a startling splash of fur around its face, like a permanent, exaggerated hairstyle. Our countdown starts with number 5, the tamarin. Before you get too close, take one more slow breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the ground under your feet, or the bed or chair under your real body, wherever you are listening from. No matter what happens in this story, you are safe. The monkeys stay in their trees and platforms. You stay exactly where you are. The only thing that needs to move is your attention. Now, let's step a little closer and see what life is really like for a monkey that humans think will fit neatly into a human world. You lean your elbows lightly on the wooden railing and let your eyes adjust to the tangle of branches in front of you. At first, it looks like nothing more than a small vertical forest. Thin trunks, angled limbs, ropes and platforms threaded between them like a child's drawing of a treehouse. Then, one of the knots of bark moves. It's smaller than you expect, about the length of your hand from head to tail base, with a tail that seems almost as long again. The fur on his back is a mix of browns and golds, but around the face there's a startling frame of lighter fur, flaring out like a permanent wild haircut. The tamarin pauses on a branch, tiny hands gripping the bark, and tilts its head to look at you. Its eyes are dark and bright at the same time, measuring, curious, not quite sure yet if you are interesting or irrelevant. Another shape joins it from above, landing so lightly the branch barely bends, then another and another, until you can see the whole small family. One adult, clearly in charge, 2 slightly smaller adults or older juveniles, and a younger body clinging to someone's back like a furry backpack. The baby's hands and feet are buried in the fur of its carrier, holding on as the group moves. It's early, and this is tamarin morning. In the wild, they would be waking up in a tree hollow or on a high branch, pressed together for warmth, fur still holding the cool of night air. Here, in this sanctuary, the shape of the tree is partly human-made, but the routine is the same stretch. Look, listen. Decide if the world feels safe enough to climb out into. You notice how they move, not like heavy animals that test each branch, but like quick, sure-footed thoughts. A leap, a grab, a pause. Their hands and feet have claw-like nails instead of flat human ones, better for clinging to bark. They run straight up the trunk, sideways along a branch, upside down under it, as if gravity is more of a suggestion than a rule. One of the tamarins, the one with the baby, makes a soft, bird-like chirp. Another answers from a nearby branch. It isn't random noise. It's a small, constant conversation. Are you there? I am here. Is everything all right? For animals this size, silence is dangerous. Sound is how they keep track of one another in a world where almost everything around them is bigger and heavier than they are. A caretaker appears at the edge of the enclosure, setting down a bowl on a platform and stepping back without making eye contact. Inside the bowl, you see cut fruit, small pellets, and a piece that looks like a section of tree branch. The tamarins know this routine. One of them darts forward, sniffs, and begins to nibble, careful and quick. Another follows, and soon there's a tiny, organized chaos around the food. In the wild, much of their morning would be spent searching, licking sap from wounded bark, picking insects from leaves and crevices, tasting flowers and fruits when they can find them. Their bodies are built for this kind of slow, detailed work. A little here, a little there, moving constantly so they aren't in one place long enough to become an easy target. You watch the baby for a moment. It still clings to the adult's back as they move along a branch closer to the bowl. Every so often, its small head peeks out over a shoulder, eyes huge, taking in the world. It isn't old enough to travel on its own yet, but it's already learning the map of this place. Which branches connect to which, where the good food appears, which sounds mean safe, and which mean freeze. There is a kind of quiet tension under everything they do. It's not fear exactly, more like constant readiness. Even here, in a protected space, they act as if a snake could be sliding through leaves below, or a raptor could be circling above. Every so often, one of the adults stops eating and lifts its head, scanning, listening. Only when nothing seems wrong do they go back to picking up tiny pieces of fruit with fast, precise fingers. From where you stand, it looks small and simple. A few animals in a contained space, climbing and eating. But if you let your attention settle into the details, you can feel how busy their mornings actually are. Taste this, move there. Check that noise. Groom that patch of fur. Reassure that youngster with a touch. Their whole survival depends on thousands of tiny decisions made correctly, over and over, with no breaks. You imagine trying to follow them, branch for branch. Even if you could reach them, your hands and feet would slip where theirs grip. Your arms would ache from hanging. Your sense of balance would wobble. Your body was never built to live in the vertical pathways between trunks. Theirs was never built to move along flat floors and straight walls. For now, you just watch. The air is warming as the sun climbs, and the smells shift slightly as fruit is torn open and skins are dropped. Somewhere out of sight, another group of monkeys calls, a different pattern of sound entirely. The tamarins pause, listen, answer with a short burst of notes, then go back to eating. Later, In another part of this story, you'll imagine what would happen if one of these tiny bodies ended up in a human home, on a couch, on a curtain rod, on top of a bookshelf, how its claws would feel on painted walls instead of bark, how its morning would change when the forest is replaced by furniture. But you don't have to go there yet. Right now, it's still early. The tamarins are busy with their breakfast, and you have time to simply stand at the railing, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of your own body on the solid boards, while you watch a much lighter body move through a world of branches it understands far better than you ever will. You rest your forearms on the railing a little longer, then decide to move. Standing in one place only gives you one angle on their world, and today you want more than that. You want to see how their paths look from the side, where they go when they're not in easy view. The walkway curves around the enclosure, so you start to follow it. Footsteps soft on the boards. As you move, the light shifts. Sun slips through gaps in the leaves, catching on fur, on eyes, on the smooth bark of climbing posts. From this angle, the structure is deeper than it looked at first, like a small forest folded into itself. One of the tamarins notices you. It freezes for a heartbeat, then lets out a short, questioning chirp. Another glances your way, then goes back to grooming. They aren't exactly afraid of you, but they are aware of you, the way you might be aware of a stranger standing quietly at the edge of a room. Not a threat, not yet, but something that needs to be accounted for. You pause near a support post and lean your shoulder against it. From here, you're closer. You can hear the soft scrape of tiny claws, the faint smacking of fruit being chewed, the rustle of fur when one tamarin pushes past another. You see the curve of their fingers, the way they keep 3 points of contact most of the time, as if falling is not an option they can afford. You take a single step forward, just to see what happens. 3 heads turn toward you at once. The adults stop what they're doing. One shifts so that its body is between you and the baby. Another moves higher, onto a branch with a better view. The air in the enclosure feels different for a moment, as if your one small movement has been added to a list of things they're tracking. You step back again, slowly, until your shoulder touches the post. The tension eases. One of the tamarins flicks its tail, gives a soft trill that seems to say, "Nothing urgent," and the group settles back into its earlier rhythm. To them, you are a large, unpredictable shape at the edge of their world. You don't feel powerful, standing here half sleepy, listening to their calls, but from their perspective, the decisions humans make can change the shape of their day or their whole lives. You keep walking until you reach a small side gate ahead. It's not the main access for the keepers, just a narrow door leading to a tiny platform closer to the trees. There is still a barrier of mesh between you and the monkeys. But when you slip through and stand on the little platform, it feels as if you've stepped into their space instead of hovering at the edges. The smells are stronger here. Fruit, damp wood, the faint scent of fur. One of the tamarins creeps along a branch until it is almost eye level with you, only an arm's length away on the other side of the mesh. It tilts its head, studying your face with the same careful curiosity you feel toward it. Up close, you can see the texture of its fur, the small lines around its eyes, the quick, shallow rise and fall of its chest. Its hands flex on the bark, claws digging in just enough to keep it steady. Behind it, the rest of the group keeps moving through their quiet pattern of grooming and scanning. It would be easy, you think, for someone to fall in love with a creature like this at this distance. To see only the small face, the delicate hands, the reachable branch, and imagine how simple it would be to bring one home. To picture it on the back of a couch instead of on a tree limb, or on a shoulder instead of on another tamarin's back. In some stories, that's all it takes. A window, a price, a promise that this animal will stay small and be low maintenance. Money changes hands, a box closes, a truck door slams. From the human side, it feels like a purchase. From the tamarin side, it feels like something else entirely. In this story, we're not going to watch the paperwork or the drive. We're just going to notice one small detail. When the box is carried away, the group inside the enclosure is one body smaller. The next morning, a mother will search the same few meters of branches longer than she needs to, calling softly at first, then more sharply, before she finally goes silent. The roots through the trees will still be there, but one familiar weight will be missing from them, a gap in the pattern that doesn't know how to close. You stand on the little platform and imagine that box in your own hands, solid and light at the same time. Air holes, a faint, uncertain rustle from inside. However it left the trees, however gently you carry it now, from the tamarin's point of view, it has been stolen. Soon we'll open that box again, far from the sanctuary, in a human home that was never built for a tamarin at all. For now, you take one last look at the small shapes moving through the branches, fixing them in your mind so you'll have something real to compare against the version that lives only in your house and in your hands. You don't see the moment the truck leaves the sanctuary. You don't see the paperwork or the money changing hands. Everything between there and here has already happened off stage. You are standing in your own doorway now, in the familiar light of your home. The air smells different here, less like leaves and damp bark, more like dust, fabric, soap, and a trace of whatever you last cooked. In your hands, the box is the same size it was on that little platform, but here it feels heavier. You set it down on a low table or on the floor, somewhere in the center of the room. For a moment, you look at it. Cardboard, a strip of tape, a few small air holes along one side. From inside, there is a faint, shifting sound. Claws on a smooth surface that offers no grip. In the sanctuary, the tamarin's world was vertical. Branches, trunks, ropes, platforms. Here, the first thing it learns about your house is that its floor is flat and slick. No bar to hold, no rough rope to grab, no leaves to soften the edges, just the inside of a box. You kneel beside it. Your knees press into your familiar floor. If you listen closely, you can hear the tamarin breathing, quick, shallow, uncertain. It doesn't know this room. It doesn't know that the fridge hum means nothing, that the traffic outside your window won't climb the walls, that the shadows here are mostly harmless. Its mind is still in the trees. You peel the tape back slowly, trying not to startle it. The cardboard gives with a soft tearing sound. The lid opens an inch, then a little more. The light that spills in is different from the light at the sanctuary, filtered through your curtains, tinted by your paint, bouncing off straight lines and right angles instead of branches. For a heartbeat, nothing moves. Then a small, dark face appears at the gap, framed by that wild halo of fur. The tamarin blinks, pupils wide, nostrils flaring as it samples the air. It doesn't see trees. It doesn't see its group. It sees a large, unfamiliar space and the outline of a human close by. You sit very still. Eventually, the tamarin climbs up onto the edge of the box. In your home, it looks even smaller than it did in the enclosure. Its tail hangs down, almost touching the floor. Its hands flex nervously, claws scratching lightly at the cardboard. It turns its head, taking in the room in quick, jerky movements. From here, your furniture looks different. The back of the couch is a narrow ledge. The curtain rod is a thin branch high on a flat, impossible tree. Shelves look like staggered trunks leading up a wall. There is nowhere soft to land if you fall. You watch as the tamarin makes its first choice. It jumps, not far, just from the edge of the box to the nearby couch. The cushions dip under its weight. Its claws sink into the fabric, finding some purchase but no real texture. It pauses, pressed low, ears alert, waiting to see if anything terrible happens. Nothing does. Slowly, it stands up again and moves along the back of the couch, sniffing. It touches the wall with one hand, testing. Paint, not bark, somewhere deep in its brain. A map is starting to draw itself. Box, couch, wall, window. There is a small, quiet part of you that is pleased. The fantasy you had of a tiny monkey in your living room has become real. There it is, moving across your furniture, a piece of the jungle in the middle of your ordinary space. Somewhere else, in another place, and another morning. There is still a gap in the branches where this tamarin used to be. A mother who will circle the same patch of space again tomorrow, just in case brothers or sisters who will have to adjust to slightly different positions during sleep, a slightly different pattern of eyes and ears watching for hawks. Here, none of that is visible. There is just the monkey and the couch, and your heartbeat in your ears as you wait to see what it will do next. The tamarin moves along the couch and climbs the curtain. Its claws find the weave of the fabric easily. In a few quick, practiced motions, it is at the top, perched on the rod, tail hanging down in front of the glass. From this height, it can see more of the room, the doorway, the table, the smooth floor with no safe place to hide. It makes a soft, questioning sound. It is listening for an answer that doesn't come. No familiar voices respond. No other bodies move through the branches to meet it. The only large animal in this room is you speak to it quietly. A soft word, a new name, something meant to reassure. It doesn't understand the meaning, but it hears the tone. This is the first hour of its new life as a pet. A box opened, a few small jumps, a new map starting to form. From the outside, it doesn't look dramatic. Nothing is broken. No one is screaming. It is just a tiny monkey exploring a human room. The real changes for both of you will come later, as the hours turn into days and the novelty wears thin. Days do not change everything at once. They change little habits, little expectations. At first, the tamarin in your house is a novelty. You film short clips, the tiny body running along the back of the couch, the way it tilts its head at the television, the moment it clings to your sleeve like you're just another branch in a very strange forest. Friends send heart emojis. Someone writes, "I've always wanted one." The tamarin is still mapping your home. Curtains become climbing routes. The top of the bookcase becomes a lookout point. The table is a place to raid whenever you forget to clear your plate. You start moving objects higher, closing doors, taping down cords. You call it monkey-proofing, as if this is just another version of child-proofing. The first crack appears in the mornings. In the sanctuary, the tamarin woke with its group. Here, it wakes before you do. Long before your alarm, a sharp bird-like call cuts through the quiet. Not once, but again and again, rising in urgency when no one answers. In the forest, that call would be a check-in. Are you there? Are you safe? Is everyone awake? In your bedroom, it's an alarm you never set. You get up earlier than you meant to, half-dressed, eyes gritty, to open the door, to offer food, to let the tamarin cling to your shirt. The calls soften while it sits on your shoulder. The moment you try to put it down and go back to your morning, they rise again. On the days you have to leave the house, the tamarin watches you prepare with growing agitation. It follows the edges of the room, pacing faster as you put on shoes, grab keys, move toward the door. When the door closes, the quiet doesn't last. From the hallway, you hear the first shrill protest, then a string of high-pitched sounds that don't understand work schedules or commute times. In the wild, a tamarin almost never chooses to be alone. Here, being alone is built into its day, whether it understands that or not. The rest of the house starts to change as well. Cushions acquire small pools where claws have caught. The curtains develop permanent little ladders, threads loosened and hanging. Shelves show tiny scratches where a monkey has tested each surface before jumping. You notice bite marks too, not from aggression at first, but from investigation. The tamarin's mouth is another way of asking, "What is this?" The corner of a remote, the edge of a book, the cap of a bottle. You find a chewed electrical cable before anything terrible happens. The rubber is torn, the metal inside exposed just enough to make your stomach drop. You picture a small wet hand, a curious mouth, a spark. Diet becomes its own puzzle. In the sanctuary, someone else handled the details. Here, you are the one reading labels, ordering special food, cutting fruit into pieces. Still, there are days when the tamarin's stool is loose, or its fur looks a little dull, or it seems restless in a way you can't fix with toys or soft words. One evening, when you try to take something from its hands, it turns and bites. It happens too fast to avoid. A flash of teeth, a sharp pain, a bead of blood rising on your skin. The tamarin isn't planning anything. It's a reflex, a small animal defending a small treasure. You pull your hand back, startled more than injured. The tamarin clings to the object, eyes wide. For a long moment, neither of you moves. Later, washing the shallow wound under the tap, you remember how small its teeth looked when it yawned on the branch at the sanctuary. They seem different now. Nights don't bring complete rest either. A noise from outside can send the tamarin into anxious movement along the highest surfaces it can reach. Sometimes it's quiet for hours, curled in a nest you've tried to build. Sometimes a sound you barely notice pulls it up and out again with sharp, questioning calls. Little by little, the shape of your life bends around this one small animal. Plans are shortened, invitations are declined. Vacations start to seem impossible. You can't explain to a tamarin that you'll be back in a week. On the days when you're most tired, you find yourself replaying the earliest images in your mind. The tamarin on the branch, pressed against its family. The way it froze when you stepped forward at the enclosure, and how they shifted around the baby to keep it out of reach. The small gap that must have opened in that pattern when one body disappeared in. Here, in the flattened world of floors and furniture, the tamarin has what people call a good home. Food, safety from predators, medical care if needed, toys, attention, and yet some part of it is always listening for an answer that neither you nor this house can give. One evening, much later, you sit on the couch while the tamarin moves restlessly along the curtain rod, back and forth, pausing now and then to make that same questioning call you first heard in the trees. The sound hangs in the room for a moment, unanswered. You don't change your life back all at once. You change small things, the way you move around the room, the order of your mornings, the thoughts that sit at the edge of sleep. Nights with the tamarins settle into a pattern. It rarely happens that both of you are quiet at the same time. When you sit, it moves. When you lie down, it paces along the highest surfaces it can reach. Some evenings it curls in the nest you made for it and stays still. Other evenings, a sound from outside or a shadow on the wall pulls it up again, back and forth along the curtain rod, tail flicking, claws scratching softly at the paint. You learn to read its moods a little. The bright, sharp curiosity when you bring out new branches or toys. The restless, repetitive circuits when it has more energy than your walls can absorb. The thin edge in its calls on days when you've been gone longer than usual. You start to read about tamarins after midnight, screen light pale against your tired eyes, pages about diet, about social needs, about the way their bodies are built to move through layered forest rather than along flat floors. There are photographs of family groups pressed tightly together, of wild troops in trees you will never climb. On the screen, people argue in comments. Some describe their success with tiny monkeys in houses like yours. Others talk about bites, infections, cages covered with blankets in an attempt to keep the noise down. A few link to sanctuaries that are already full. One night, the tamarin jolts awake at a distant siren. It scrambles up the side of its nest, leaps to the curtain, and races to the top. From there it calls sharp and loud, the same questioning sound you first heard in the trees. You lie on your back, watching the small body dart against the ceiling line like a trapped thought. For a moment, your mind flickers back to the sanctuary. The vertical roots, the net of branches, the other bodies press close at rest. Here, there is only this one animal, and the pattern it is beginning to wear into your house. You don't decide anything right then. You simply watch and listen, and let the sound sink in. The room smells faintly of fruit and fabric, and something wild that no soap completely removes. When sleep finally reaches you, it doesn't come as a clean break. Thoughts drag pieces of your living room along with them. A box on the floor, a small face at the lid, the question in its eyes. Somewhere in that slow slide downward, the walls dissolve. You are lying on something cold and uneven now. Your shoulder presses into damp stone. The air is thicker than in your apartment, humid and heavy, carrying the smell of wet earth, crushed leaves, and distant water. Above you, something small moves, then something much larger. Branches shifting under real weight. You open your eyes. The sky is mostly hidden by a high ceiling of leaves. Light filters down in pale, moving patches, never quite reaching the forest floor in full. Vines hang in loops and curtains. Trunks rise in columns, streaked with moss and lichen. The rock under your hand is slick, and a slow bead of water finds its way down the side of your neck. Somewhere overhead, something calls. It's not the small, sharp sound of a tamarin. This voice is deeper, a burst of wild barking notes followed by a crashing rustle as branches sway, then another and another, until it sounds like the canopy itself is shifting. You push yourself up to sit on the rock. This forest is not folded inside fences. The trees here go up far beyond any platform you can see. High in that layered green, long shadows move from trunk to trunk without touching the ground. Tails longer than their bodies act as balancing poles. Limbs stretch from branch to branch in arcs that would send a human straight into empty air. Number 4 on your list lives up there, in the space between the trees. The big, long-limbed monkey built for flying through the canopy. You can't see it clearly yet, just quick shapes and sudden flashes of movement. A dark body against a lighter patch of leaves, a tail curling around a branch like a fifth limb, a leap that carries someone several meters through the air, as if the gap is nothing at all. From down here, the distance between their world and yours feels larger than any ocean. You stay on the rock for a while, letting your eyes adjust to the layers above you. The canopy is not a flat roof. It's a mess of angles and levels and gaps, a living maze spread out in 3 dimensions. The spider monkeys treat it like a familiar hallway. One dark body rushes along a branch and swings out into empty air. Arms stretch, legs trail, tail curls. For a breath, there is nothing under it but distance. Then the tail hooks around the next branch, the body swings up, and the landing is so smooth it looks inevitable. Another follows along a slightly different route, hands and tail choosing their own pattern of grips. You step down from the rock and begin to walk along the forest floor. Down here, the world is thick. Roots rise in ridges. Fallen trunks lie at odd angles, soft with moss and old fungus. Leaves hide hollows you don't see until your foot sinks deeper than expected. Every few steps, you have to adjust. Lifting a little higher, sidestepping a vine, steadying a hand against a trunk slick with moisture. Above you, the troop moves as if the ground barely exists. You hear them before you see them clearly. A burst of hoarse barking calls rolls through the canopy, answered by another group somewhere further away. Closer in, there are shorter sounds. Grunts, squeaks, breathy notes traded between animals who can't see each other through the leaves, but need to know where everyone is. You find a place where the trees thin and stop beside a buttressed trunk. From here, between the leaves and branches, you can see more of their world. They're spread across several trees, a loose band of bodies linked by sound and habit. One monkey hangs almost entirely by its tail, both hands free to reach for fruit. Another climbs over the top of a branch on all fours, then drops down so that its hands grip the underside and its body swings below. Long limbs look awkward in stillness, perfect in motion. The first job of the morning up there is food. You watch as they work the fruiting branches. A hand reaches, tests, pulls. Teeth tear at the skin. Juice drips along fingers and down onto the bark. Peels and half-chewed pieces fall past you to the forest floor, landing in soft thumps around your feet. Insects will take care of what they leave behind. You pick up one of the fallen skins. It's still warm from the mouth that held it. The troop doesn't feed in silence. Every shift in position, every approach, every small challenge over space or food comes with a sound or a gesture. One monkey lunges toward a patch of fruit another was reaching for. There's a bark, a slap of hand on bark, a tail flick. Space is rearranged. No one stays in one spot long enough to become an easy target. Spider monkeys aren't built to live alone. Their safety depends on this loose, moving network of bodies. Eyes scanning from different angles, ears catching different sounds. Every individual a node in a net that stretches across the canopy. If one alarms, the whole group adjusts. You see it happen when a branch shakes in a way that doesn't quite match the wind. A monkey on the far side of the tree freezes, tail curling tighter. Its head snaps toward the movement. Others sense the change even before you do. Positions shift. A few bodies bunch closer together. One animal climbs to a slightly higher perch with a better view. Whatever caused the disturbance passes, and tension drains out of their limbs. A youngster launches too boldly toward a gap and scrambles at the edge, catching the branch with a flailing grab. An adult reaches out, grips a handful of fur, and hauls it the rest of the way. There's a brief flurry of scolding sounds, then grooming to smooth the moment back down. As the sun climbs, the air grows heavier, the light flatter. Patches of brightness move along trunks and branches, slipping in and out of leaves. The feeding slows. Most of the easy fruit in this patch has been reached. The troop begins to stretch and drift, threads of movement lengthening into the surrounding trees. You follow as far as the ground allows, picking your way over roots and fallen logs. Sometimes you lose them entirely, the canopy above you just a solid wall of green. Then a call rings out, or a tail curls in just the right gap, and you find them again. Eventually they collect in a section where several big trees overlap, their branches weaving together like fingers. Here, the space between trunks tightens just enough to feel safe. Escape routes are still there in every direction, but the group can rest while staying within reach of one another. One by one, they settle. A large female stretches out along a branch, belly down, arms and legs hanging on either side. Her tail wraps loosely around a smaller branch for a backup. A youngster wedges itself into the crook of a trunk and a limb, using the solid angle as a pillow. Others tuck themselves into curves and corners, some touching, some with just a tail draped across another back. Time drifts on the forest floor. Above you, the resting troop is a loose pattern of tails and limbs and still shapes. Insects drone. Sunlight shifts along the trunks. Eventually the canopy begins to move again. Heads lift, spines arch, fingers curl against bark. One monkey unpeels itself from a fork in the tree and stretches along the branch. Another drops to hang by its arms, tail loosely coiled for balance. The youngster you watched earlier scrambles over two adults in a row and is pushed away both times, then finds a place higher up. The troop flows back into motion, following paths feet and tail know without thought. Some head toward fresh leaves and fruit. Others circle outward, checking the edges of where they feel safe. You follow as far as the ground allows, stepping over roots and fallen logs as shapes cross from tree to tree in a loose chain overhead. Sometimes they are directly above you. Sometimes the canopy knits itself tight and you see only hints. A tail flicking through a gap in the leaves, crumbs falling as someone eats, a quick flash of pale belly against a brighter patch of sky. You are just one more thing to track below. Predator, pig, fallen branch, human. As the afternoon leans toward evening, the light thins and warms. Shadows grow longer on the forest floor. The tops of the tallest trees glow. The troop's movement changes. They are still feeding, but there is a quieter urgency underneath. They are choosing where to sleep. You watch them test spots, bouncing on limbs, settling briefly into forks of wood and then moving on. Younger animals follow older ones and copy their choices without needing words. While they do this, another sound creeps into the edge of hearing. At first, it could be distant thunder, a low, irregular growl that has nothing to do with wind or water. It comes and goes, easy to ignore if you want to stay wrapped in birds and leaves and monkey calls. Spider monkeys are not the only ones who know this forest. People come here with saws and guns, sacks and crates. Some cut trees, some hunt. Some look up into the canopy and see, not families but inventory. Small, clever animals that can be boxed and sold as exotic pets far away. You don't see the first contact. You notice it the way the monkeys do, in the way sound changes. One moment the troop is moving in its usual pattern, voices spread thinly among the trees as they balance distance, food, and safety. The next, a hard crack splits the afternoon. Leaves explode into motion high above. Every call in the canopy sharpens at once. Bodies that were drifting now rush and bunch. A female scrambles toward the center of the group, pressing a baby so tightly against her chest that you can see its fingers digging into her fur. Others sprint along escape routes they know by heart. Arcs of movement cut short when branches thrash in the wrong direction. From the ground you see fragments, a shape falling too fast, grabbing at branches with frantic hands, another launching into thicker cover, a flash of belly as someone twists mid-air. Human voices follow, flat and low, tangled with the rough noise of branches forced aside. Then, slowly, the forest closes again. The troop pulls away, their alarm calls stretching thinner and thinner until they fade into distance. The space they leave behind feels wrong, like a chord with one note missing. You move toward the disturbed area and let the ground tell you what it can. Freshly broken twigs, fruit mashed into the soil, a smear of something dark on bark, boot prints pressed over lighter animal tracks. There is no spider monkey here now. Somewhere beyond your sight, a small body is inside something it has never known before. Wood, canvas, rope. The tight smell of human sweat and petrol. The engine that brought those people in starts up again, louder now. A coughing growl that doesn't belong to any creature the forest raised. It fades along a narrow road that cuts through the trees. The troop that remains will adjust because there is no other choice. Sleeping positions will shift. Vigilance will rise. A gap in their pattern will be patched around, but it will never feel quite right again. You don't see the middle of the journey. The stalls, the cages, the hands that lift and pass the animal along. When you meet that spider monkey again, the forest is gone. You're back in your own bedroom. The smell of damp leaves has been replaced by soap, dust, and whatever you last cooked. There is a knock, a brief exchange at the door, the sound of something heavy set down outside. By the time you reach the hallway, the delivery person has already turned away. On the floor is a crate banded with metal, its rough sides punched with small air holes. A label with your name sits where bark once was. Inside, pressed against splintered walls that smell of dust and fear, a monkey that once trusted the distance between branches is learning that the world can shrink to the size of a box. You stand in the hallway for a moment, looking at the crate. It doesn't look like much from the outside. Rough wood, scuffed corners, metal bands, a few air holes. Your name on a label, printed neatly as if this were just another parcel. Something shifts inside, then goes still. The crate gives a faint knock against the floor. You drag it into the living room. Spider monkeys are light, but they are not small. The crate grates over the threshold and scrapes the wood. Your familiar room looks different with it sitting in the middle of the floor, like a misplaced piece of forest. The air smells of cardboard, wood, and a sharp animal musk that does not belong here. You kneel and work at the latches. Metal squeaks. One corner gives way, then the next. You lift the lid carefully, just enough to let light in. Eyes shine from the shadows at the back of the crate, wide and black. Then the rest of the face emerges. Dark fur, a pale patch around the mouth, whiskers trembling as it samples the air. The spider monkey stays pressed to the far side, tail coiled tight around a piece of wood, limbs bunched close. This box is the whole world it knows right now. You and your living room are just shapes beyond the opening. Slowly, it moves forward. One long arm reaches toward the gap, fingers spread. It touches the edge of the crate, then the floor beyond, testing the texture. Smooth, cool, no give. It leans out, then pulls back again. Finally, in one quick motion, it commits. It pours out of the crate in a stretch of limbs and tail, more like liquid than an animal. In your living room, it looks both too big and strangely weightless. It does not explore the floor. It looks up. Your ceiling is low by forest standards. Light fixtures, curtain rods, the top of the bookcase, the edge of a hanging plant. To a spider monkey, these are the only places that make any sense. It makes a small, urgent sound and launches upward. In 2 bounds, it's on the back of the couch. In another, it's on the curtain rod. Claws gripping metal and fabric at once. The rod flexes under its weight. The monkey crouches there, pressed against the wall, chest heaving, eyes scanning. From up there, it can see your whole world. Doorways, furniture, the crate it just left. It can also see how flat the space is, how few layers there really are. You move slowly around the room. Your feet thud softly on the floor. Its movements are almost silent. It crosses the curtain rod hand over hand, tail looping ahead of it. At the end of the rod it pauses, then jumps to the top of the bookcase. Books rattle. A framed photo tips and smacks the wall. The monkey flinches, then freezes, tail coiled, fingers dug into the wood. Nothing terrible happens. The bookcase holds. The photo doesn't fall. The monkey relaxes again and begins to move, touching everything within reach. A plant leaf, a stack of papers, the edge of a lamp. You start moving things before it does. The lamp goes to the floor. The photo comes down. You clear a path along the top shelf so that, if it runs, there will be fewer things to knock off. The spider monkey does not understand which objects matter to you. It only understands reach and grip and distance. It tests your shelves and walls the way it tested branches in the canopy, learning which ones hold and which ones bend too far. When it finally drops to the floor, the room feels smaller. Its arms brush the coffee table as it passes. Its tail curls around the leg of a chair for balance. In the kitchen doorway, it pauses, sniffing the change in smell, frying oil, old coffee, dish soap. You follow it in. On the counter, a bowl of fruit turns into a quick raid. Long fingers snatch a piece, and then another. Peels fall on the tiles. Juice smears across the cupboard doors as it climbs higher than you thought it could in such a narrow space. When you manage to steer it back toward the living room with soft sounds and an offered treat. There are sticky handprints on the fridge, a spoon on the floor, and a small avalanche of tea boxes where it tested a shelf. The rest of the afternoon becomes a pattern of small, rolling disasters. A curtain now sags where the rod bent under repeated use. Scratches stripe the top of the bookcase. A plant pot lies on its side, soil scattered in a dark fan across the floor. Someone will have to check the television cables before sharp teeth or quick fingers find them. The spider monkey is not being bad. It is being exactly what it was built to be. A large, agile animal mapping a 3-dimensional forest. Your home is simply the wrong shape for that body. Every leap feels too short. Every surface is either too high to reach or too fragile to trust. By the time the light outside has faded to grey, the crate in the corner looks strangely honest. It is the only thing in the room that admits, with its splintered boards and metal bands, that something this wild does not really fit inside these walls. You don't fix a house after a spider monkey in a single evening. You just start picking up pieces. Within days, your flat looks wrong. The plant in the sunny corner is gone. The curtains never hang straight, and pale claw marks run along the top of the bookcase. A blur of scuffs down the hallway shows where a tail has brushed the paint. The monkey has mapped this new world faster than you have. It knows which shelves flex, which ones hold, how far it can throw its body and still catch the kitchen counter with one hand. It has learned that if it jumps hard on the curtain rod, the fabric swings like a vine, and if it screams at the right moment, you will appear. Night doesn't calm it. Night just rearranges the shadows. When you turn off the lights, the spider monkey goes higher, claiming door frames, wardrobe tops, the narrow ridge above the hallway. You lie there listening to soft thuds of hands, the scrape of claws on paint, the faint rattle of something loose each time it passes. You try closing it in one room to sleep. You build a nest in the highest corner you can manage, close the door and listen. For a while there is only rustling and the occasional soft call. Then, as the first light sneaks around the curtains, the sound sharpens. Calls turn harsh. Something hits the door again and again. Claws rasp at the frame. A long arm reaches under the gap so far you see the wrist bones under the fur. When you open the door, the wood around the latch is freshly scratched. The monkey bolts past you, climbs to the highest point it can find and calls into a room that has no troop to answer back. You adjust your days around it. When you stay home, you become part of its scaffolding. It uses your shoulders as stepping stones and your arms as extra branches, perching on the back of your chair while you try to work. When you leave, you never know which house you'll return to. Wary stillness with the monkey curled in its nest, or a storm already in progress. Cushions on the floor, cupboard doors hanging open, a trail of objects that once lived neatly on shelves. The questions begin quietly, somewhere between wiping fruit from the walls and taping foam over furniture corners. How long can this go on? What happens if it bites harder next time? Or if a window breaks? Your late-night searches change. Not best monkey harness or exotic pet tips, but rescue reports and sanctuary pages. Lists of surrendered animals. Spider monkeys arriving overfed on the wrong foods. Missing teeth from chewing bars. Pacing the same 3 steps over and over. You learn that in the wild, a spider monkey can live into its 20s, and that many of the pets in those lists began in living rooms, not so different from yours. Eventually, the questions stop feeling hypothetical. The day you make the call, the spider monkey is having what looks, from outside, like a good day. It has found a clean route from the bookcase, to the top of the wardrobe, to the hallway beam, while a voice on the phone explains transport, quarantine, paperwork. There is a crate again. Not the same one, but close enough that your stomach reacts as if it is. You line it with soft, familiar-smelling things, set it in the living room, and leave the door open. For a while, nothing happens. The monkey keeps to its high roots, watching the box the way it once watched you, until curiosity wins before trust does. It climbs down in stages, curtain rod, back of the couch, arm of the chair, coffee table, circles the crate, sniffs the edges, taps the sides with its fingers, then finally hops inside, far enough to reach the treat you've placed at the back. You close the door. The sound of the latch sliding home is small, but it rearranges the room. In the crate, the monkey turns in a tight circle, pressing its hands against the slats, calling once, sharply. You carry the box to the door. The weight pulls at your arms. The scent inside, fruit, fur, fear, the faint trace of your own house, rises through the air holes. When you set it down for the last time, the floor under your feet feels oddly solid and uncertain at once. The transport vehicle takes the crate away to a place that promises trees, other monkeys and space. You watch it disappear down the street until it is just another car. Back inside, the house is suddenly quiet. The crate-shaped patch on the floor is just wood again, with a faint indentation where the weight sat. You go to bed later than you mean to. Sleep comes slowly. Then, unnoticed, the smell of dust and old fruit is replaced by something warmer, edged with river water and sun on stone. When you open your eyes again, you're not in your bedroom. You're sitting on a low bench in a bright clearing beside a cluster of simple wooden buildings. Somewhere close by, water runs over rocks. From the line of trees beyond the fence, a much smaller, sharper voice calls out, a high, chattering burst that belongs to a different kind of monkey entirely. You're still on the low bench in the clearing when the sound comes again. Not a bark like the spider monkey, not the sharp chirp of a tamarin, but a higher, faster chatter, like someone shuffling a deck of tiny wooden cards. It spills from the strip of trees beyond the fence in quick bursts, stops, then starts again from a different branch. You stand and walk toward the fence. The boards under your feet are warm from the sun. The air smells of river water and damp soil. Up close, the fence is just wire and posts. Beyond it, the ground drops toward a narrow river. On the far bank, the forest thickens into full canopy again. On this side, the trees leave more space between their trunks, as if the forest is loosening its grip at the edge. For a moment, you can't see what's making the noise. Leaves twitch in several places at once. A branch shivers under a weight that's too small to see clearly. Then one of them appears. It's tiny compared to the spider monkey, no bigger than a cat. Light enough that the twig it stands on barely bends. Olive and yellow fur. A white face with a dark muzzle. Round eyes that catch the light. Its tail hangs behind it like a line of punctuation. Long but loose, not curled for support. It moves like a thought you haven't quite finished. In the time it takes you to blink, it has checked 3 branches, glanced down at the river, and called once toward the trees behind it. The call is answered from your left, then your right, then somewhere above, until the whole strip of forest edge seems full of voices that belong to bodies you can't quite pin down. Squirrel monkeys don't travel alone. You begin to notice the rest of the troop. Here, a small shape clinging to a thicker branch. There, 2 animals press close together, tails overlapping while they pick through each other's fur. A youngster leaps for a gap that looks too wide and lands with a scramble and a burst of chatter. Another rides tightly against an adult's back as the group moves. They travel like a school of fish in 3 dimensions, spreading out to search, pulling together when anything feels wrong. Dozens of bodies all listening to one another at once. You follow the fence line while they work. The path beside the wire is packed hard. Your boots crunch on gravel. On the other side, the monkeys move through mid-level branches, rarely climbing to the canopy's top or dropping to the ground. Their world is an invisible band suspended between earth and sky. They don't stay long in any one tree. A cluster of them cleans a branch of insects and fruit in minutes. Then a few animals jump to the next tree, and the rest follow, spilling across like water poured from one cup into another. You walk to keep up, and still they gain distance whenever your feet have to step around a root or a dip in the path. They are small. That's the first thing a human eye wants to say about them. Small enough to fit along your arm. Light enough that, in a different story, you could imagine one perched on your shoulder while you walk through a house. From a distance, they look like perfect, portable monkeys. Quick, clever, bright-eyed, easy to picture in a living room. But nothing about their day is small. Their home range stretches far along this river edge and back into the denser forest. Their safety depends on many eyes, many hands, many bodies moving and resting in a pattern your mind can't quite hold. Their hearts beat fast. Their brains stay busy. Their design assumes a constant flow of information from dozens of other monkeys. As the sun climbs higher, the heat thickens near the ground. Sweat gathers between your shoulder blades. Up in their band of branches, the squirrel monkeys keep moving in short bursts, then settle for brief rests on shaded limbs. You watch as they choose a mid-afternoon pause. Several animals cluster on one thick branch overhanging the water. Others fill nearby limbs, close enough to touch tails or stretch out a hand. The sound level drops, but doesn't fall silent. There is always one more contact call, one more tiny shift of position. From here, the troop is a shifting, breathing necklace of bodies threaded through leaves and branches, all of them alert to one another, and to every change in light and sound along the river. You stay by the fence, leaning on the warm wire, listening to their high voices bouncing off the water. And it is easy, dangerously easy, to imagine what it would feel like to take just one of those small bodies out of this crowded, noisy strand and into a space where it would have only you. The air at the river edge grows heavier as the day stretches on. Warm water, wet stone, and leaf mold mix into one thick smell. In the branches above the bank, squirrel monkeys shift from rest back into motion. They don't wake all at once. A youngster rolls over a neighbor's tail and is scolded. Another stretches, tests its grip on the branch, and hops to a slightly higher perch. Short calls ripple outward until the forest edge is talking again. Soon the troop is flowing along the river. From your place by the fence, you walk to keep pace with them. They move faster than you can, but in quick, nervous sprints. A cluster rushes across a narrow branch that leans out over the water, their bodies so light that the wood barely flexes. Another hangs back to strip insects from a fresh patch of leaves. You hear claws scrape bark and quick breaths in the leaves. High voices bounce back from the opposite bank, and you feel how much this little species relies on being surrounded by others. You watch as one small monkey edges farther along a branch over the river than the others are willing to go. Its tail hangs behind it in a long line, balancing each step. It reaches the last cluster of leaves, snatches something small and edible, then darts back toward thicker limbs in a blur. You lean your arms on the warm wire of the fence and imagine that body in your house, on a curtain rod, on the back of a chair, skimming along a bookshelf the way it now skims along a branch. The size, the speed, the bright-eyed focus all seem, on the surface, easier than the long limbs of the spider monkey you already learned from. Small must mean simpler, a part of your mind suggests. Along the river, people have their own thoughts about these monkeys. Some see them as neighbors, part of the soundscape. Others see them as pests in cornfields and fruit trees. A few see them as income. Small bodies are easier to catch, easier to hide, easier to ship. You stay where you are. But in another version of this same day, someone does not. In that version, a man in a low boat hugs the bank, watching the same troop from below instead of from behind a fence. He listens for the densest calls, the tightest knot of bodies overhanging the water. He chooses a branch close enough to reach with a long pole. The squirrel monkeys don't understand boats, not the first time. They understand the shape of snakes, the angle of a climbing cat, the sound of wings. The scrape of wood on stone is just another noise in a world full of them, until it isn't. A shout. The crack of something striking the branch. A net flung high toward a cluster of bodies. The details blur. What stays clear is the sudden tangle of motion. Monkeys scattering back from the edge, calls turning sharp and frantic, leaping for safer trees. One does not make it. Whether it misjudges a distance, clings to the wrong twig for a fraction too long, or is simply closest to the man's reaching hands, the ending is the same. A small body is grabbed, wrapped, stuffed quickly into a sack that smells of river and sweat and gasoline. The troop leaves with a hole in it. They don't stop to count their missing. They stop because the danger has moved on. Then they move again because the forest will not feed them if they stay. There is a brief, frantic search where the youngster was last seen. Calls thrown into the trees with no answer. Then there is the rest of the day, because the sun still goes down, and the predators still climb, and the insects still bite. The sack goes into the boat. The boat goes downriver. You don't see any of that from the clearing. You see only the troop slipping back into thicker foliage, their voices thinning as they travel away from the fence. The path from forest to living room is not straight. It bends through markets and holding cages, through hands that do not keep the monkey long but earn something by passing it on. By the time the squirrel monkey has crossed borders in the belly of a plane, the forest has been reduced to memory, the feel of certain bark, the chorus of many voices at once, the weight of other bodies touching it in sleep. When you meet it, there is no river. You are back in your hallway at home, the same place where one crate was carried in and then carried out again. Light from the window falls in a familiar rectangle on the floor. The crate, this time, is smaller. It sits just inside the door, banded with metal, punched with small air holes. The label carries your name again, along with a few extra words like delicate and live animal, that do not begin to cover what is inside. You set your hand against the wood and feel it vibrate with quick, restless movement. There is no heavy stillness, no long pause before a cautious step. Inside, something is already bouncing from one side to the other, trying to map the limits of yet another new world with its hands and its voice, before it has even seen your ceiling. You carry the smaller crate into the living room. It's lighter than the spider monkey's box, but more alive. The wood taps against your leg as whatever is inside throws its weight from side to side. You set it down in the middle of the floor and snap the latch open. Before you can lift the lid fully, a wiry body squeezes through the gap. The squirrel monkey spills out like a question mark pulled straight. Head, shoulders, tail. It freezes for a heartbeat, every muscle tight. Then it explodes. One leap to the coffee table, another to the back of the couch, a third to the curtain rod, claws gripping fabric, tail streaming behind like a banner. The rod sways. The monkey rides the arc and calls once, high, sharp, too loud for its size. The sound bounces off the walls. No troop answers. From the curtain rod, it darts to the top of the bookcase, skimming along the edge, fingers tapping spines. A small ornament goes over the side and hits the floor with a crack. Something plastic you thought was hidden disappears into its hands and is tested with quick teeth before you can react. You move slowly, but you move. Shards into the bin. Fruit bowl to the kitchen. A clear path along the top shelf so the monkey can run without knocking everything down at once. It doesn't understand that you are protecting anything. It only understands that the shelves are now easier to travel, so it travels them faster. Every surface becomes a circuit. It squeezes into the gap behind the bookcase, and pops out on the other side as if the wall has swallowed and spat it out. It races along the couch back, drops to the floor, springs up an armchair, then climbs your shoulder without asking. Tiny claws prick through your shirt. For a moment it perches there, gripping your hair, breath hot against your ear while it scans the room. Then it leaves you like any other object and moves on. In the kitchen, the chaos just tightens. Cooler tiles, the smell of old coffee and detergent. By the time you feel the change in air, the monkey is already on the counter, pushing a mug with one hand while the other rummages in the sink. A half-open cupboard is an invitation. It dives in. You arrive to a small storm already poured out. Dry pasta scattered across the floor, a bag of rice with the corner chewed off, grains turning the tiles to sand, a jar of peanut butter on its side, lid rolling in a slow circle. Sticky handprints bloom on the fridge. You block the most dangerous places first. Stove off, knives buried in a drawer. The cleaning cupboard clicks shut. Seconds later, the door rattles as tiny hands test it from the other side. Back in the living room, the tempo never really drops. The squirrel monkey seems powered by a motor you can't switch off. It jumps, pauses, calls, eats a small piece of something, drops the rest, climbs, chews, tests, repeats. The only still moments are when it presses into a high corner, sides heaving, eyes wide, listening for a chorus that never comes. Its energy is not play in the human sense. It is a frantic search for information and reassurance from a social world that has shrunk to one person and a room full of wrong-shaped branches. You try to make up the difference. You talk to it more than you talk to some people. You offer treat, toys, things to shred, little puzzles with food inside. It solves them faster each time. You are always behind. New sounds settle into the house. The scrabble of tiny claws on paint. The clink of metal on tiles. The high, piercing call that slices through whatever you are thinking and leaves your heart beating faster than it should. At night, you close the doors and try to shrink its world. A tall cage goes in the corner. Not a tiny pet shop box, but a metal tower laced with branches, ropes, and blankets. For a while, it seems to work. The squirrel monkey races up and down the levels, testing every bar and knot. Then the pattern stiffens instead of calming. As the hours stretch toward dawn, it calls more often. Sometimes it clings to the highest point, pressing its face to the bars and scanning the dark room for troop members that aren't there. Other times, it paces along the same narrow strip of perch, back and forth, until the movement imprints itself behind your eyes. In the morning, when you open the cage, it bursts out, as if blown free by pressure, and runs straight to the places it already knows by heart. Curtain rod, bookcase, kitchen counter, your shoulders. The messes are smaller than the spider monkeys, but constant. Peels, crumbs, shredded paper. A scattering of objects that have all been tested with teeth or fingers and found interesting for at least a moment. After a while, the house feels like a thin skin stretched over a problem you still don't have words for. A fragment of forest lightning trapped inside walls, bouncing from surface to surface because there is nowhere that energy can safely go. You don't notice the exact moment when "this is hard" becomes "this cannot go on." But it happens somewhere between the late-night pacing and the early morning shrieks. Days with the squirrel monkey begin to blur. You wake to the scrape of claws on metal, the sharp calls from the cage in the corner. You open the door and the small body spills out, racing its old circuit. curtain rod, bookcase, kitchen, you. The mess changes shape each day, but not meaning. You learn to move fragile things automatically, the way people in storm zones learn to read clouds. The monkey learns too, just not the things you hoped. It learns which cupboard doors you forget to latch, which handles are easiest to pull, how to wedge a small hand into the frame of a window. It tests every new barrier you build. It does not learn to be calm when you leave, or to wait quietly for attention. Its instincts were not written for waiting. One morning, the call changes. It's harsher, higher, riding the edge of panic. You find the monkey clinging to the cage bars instead of racing its route. Its tail lashes, hitting metal. When you open the door, it doesn't spring out. It clings to the highest perch and stares at you, sides heaving. That night, your searches shift for good. Not enrichment ideas or bonding with pet monkey, but surrender forms and sanctuary intake pages. You read about other squirrel monkeys, taken young, raised in isolation, pacing backroom cages until they bite themselves or scream, until neighbors complain. Rescued animals who spend months just learning how to be near others of their own kind without panic. When you finally call, the voice on the other end sounds tired and kind. They ask about diet, health, how long the monkey has been with you. They ask, gently, about biting. They do not sound surprised when you admit that yes, it has happened, and that you are more startled than hurt. There is paperwork. There is a fee. There is a date. On that morning, you line a small crate with soft cloth and set it on the floor. The squirrel monkey watches from the curtain rod, body tight, tail twitching. It knows that box shapes mean change now. You place a favored treat at the back of the crate and walk away. For a while, nothing happens. The monkey races its usual circuit, faster than usual, as if trying to outrun the shape of the day. Eventually, curiosity pushes ahead of caution. It drops to the floor, circles the crate, taps the wood, peers through the door. Then, in a quick decision that looks almost like surrender, it slips inside. You close the door. The crate rocks and rattles in your hands as you carry it down the hallway. Tiny fingers press through the air holes, then vanish. The call from inside is thin and piercing, a sound made for traveling through leaves, not plaster walls. The sanctuary van waits outside, engine idling. The person who takes the crate holds it as if it contains something fragile and dangerous. They talk in quiet, practical tones. Quarantine, health checks, slow introductions to other monkeys. They say that with time and space, many of these small bodies remember how to live in a group. The van door shuts. The engine noise swells, then fades down the street, taking the sound of claws on wood with it. Inside, the house feels emptied in a way it didn't after the spider monkey left. The damage is lighter, no bent rods, fewer broken things. But the silence is sharper. Your ears keep reaching for a high call that is no longer there. You tidy anyway. You coil cords, sweep crumbs, wipe tiny handprints from the fridge. You stand in the doorway and look at the space where the cage stood. A clean patch on the wall like a healed scar. Eventually, you lie down and let the day drain out of you. Sleep comes without a clear edge. One moment, you are staring at the ceiling, listening to the ordinary hum of your home. The next, the texture of the air has changed. The smell hits you first this time. Dust and cooking oil, roasted corn and wood smoke. When you open your eyes, you are not in your bedroom. You are sitting on a low stone step in a small village square. Around you, houses lean in close. walls painted in faded yellow and blue. A bell tower rises over one edge of the square, its shadow cutting across cobbles. Chickens stitch in and out of doorways. A dog sleeps in the shade of a cart. Somewhere, a radio plays a thin, cheerful song. In the middle of that human noise, another sound threads through. A soft, questioning chirp from somewhere above and behind you, followed by the quiet clink of metal. You turn. On the far side of the square, near a wall hung with bright cloth and trinkets, a monkey moves along a wooden rail. Larger than the squirrel monkey, but still light on its feet, with a round, serious face and clever hands that pause over every object within reach. Its tail balances each step. A short chain runs from the collar at its neck to the post, a capuchin. You sit on the stone step for a moment, watching the capuchin move. The chain is not heavy, but it is always there. Each time the monkey reaches the end of the rail, the metal line snaps gently taut and pulls it back toward the post. It knows exactly how far it can go. Its body checks at the same invisible boundary over and over again. Children drift toward the stall. They point, giggle, hold out bits of fruit or broken cookies. The capuchin's eyes track every hand. When someone comes close enough, it reaches out with quick, precise fingers, takes the offering and stuffs it into its mouth with both hands at once, cheeks bulging. An older man sits on a stool nearby, hat tipped back, watching the square the way someone watches weather. Every so often he snaps his fingers or whistles. At the sound, the capuchin straightens and performs something small. A turn, a little bow, hands together as if in prayer. The children laugh again. Someone's parent drops a coin into a tin. The monkey does not understand the coins. It understands that tricks mean food. When there are no children, it paces the length of the rail. Hand over hand, tail held out for balance, back and forth until the pattern digs into the wood. Sometimes it pauses to pick through its own fur, or to explore every edge of the stall, the bright cloth hanging behind it, the wooden crate, the bucket with a lid it cannot open. You stand and walk closer. The cobbles under your feet are warm and uneven. The smells stack in layers. Frying oil from a nearby stall, damp stone in the shade, the faint, sour-sweet tang of old fruit. As you approach, the capuchin notices immediately. Its head turns. Its eyes fix on you. Up close, its face looks even more human to a human brain. Expressive brows, a mouth that can pull tight with suspicion or relax with interest. When you extend a hand with a piece of fruit, it does not snatch. It reaches carefully, then pulls your fingers a little closer with one hand while taking the food with the other. Its grip is strong. You can feel the decision in each movement. The owner watches, measuring you. He sees the way you stand, the way you look at the capuchin, not with the brief interest of a passing tourist, but with the slow, searching stare of someone imagining possibilities. You recognize that look because you have worn it yourself. The conversation, when it comes, is simple. You ask how long he has had the monkey. He shrugs, throws out a number that might be true. You ask where it came from. He gestures vaguely toward the forested hills beyond the village. He complains lightly about the cost of food, the trouble of care, the way some days are good for coins and some are not. There is a pause wide enough to hold a choice. In one version of this story, you nod, buy a drink from his stall, and walk away. The capuchin's world shrinks back to the width of the chain and the length of the day, broken into fragments of work and rest and repetition. In the version you are in, you do not walk away. The idea arrives with the same quiet force it had in your own living room. Maybe you could do better. A bigger space, more toys, better food, no chain. Maybe, you tell yourself, this monkey would be happier with you. Money changes hands. Not much by your standards, enough by his. The chain is unclipped from the post, then clipped to a different anchor, your hand on the other end. The Capuchin does not understand ownership. It understands that its attachment point has moved. It climbs your arm in a rush, claws pricking your skin through your shirt, tail wrapping briefly around your wrist as if to test the strength of this new branch. From your shoulder, it looks over the square as if nothing has changed, except that the person holding the other end of its world smells like you. You don't see every step of the journey home. You remember heat on the back of your neck as you and the monkey walk out of the square, its tail brushing your shoulder with each step. You remember the way people stare or don't. After that, the memories blur into tickets and forms and crates, paperwork that turns a living body into cargo, a new box with air holes, a label with your name and an airport code. By the time the Capuchin reaches your country, the village has been compressed into a handful of smells and sounds: frying food, church bells, the scrape of its claws on that one wooden rail. When you meet it again, you are back in your own hallway. The crate this time is sturdier, with metal bars across the small window at the front. Behind them, two dark eyes shine out, reflecting your doorway, your floor, your shape leaning in. A hand reaches through the gap, palm up, fingers opening and closing in a gesture that feels almost like a question. The crate waits in the hallway. You crouch in front of it. Behind the small barred window, a hand reaches out, palm up, fingers opening and closing as if testing the air between you. When you touch your fingers to its palm, it curls around them with deliberate pressure. Not frantic like the squirrel monkey, not weightless like the spider. This grip feels considered. You carry the crate into the living room. It feels heavier than its size suggests. The Capuchin shifts its weight with you, balancing as if you're already a moving branch. When you set the box down and open the latch, it doesn't burst out. It steps out. One hand, then the other, then feet, then tail, each placed carefully, as if it's registering every new surface. It stands in the middle of your rug for a moment, taking in the room, shelves, couch, window, you. Its face turns toward the coffee table. There's a television remote there, a coaster, an empty mug. The Capuchin walks over and picks up the remote with both hands, turning it over, pressing the buttons with its thumbs. It brings the remote to its nose, smells it, then holds it out toward you as if to ask what this object does. You take it gently. The monkey watches your fingers, then your face. The fantasy you once had about capuchins comes back easily now that one is here. Helpful around the house, you'd heard. Clever, trainable, like an extra pair of hands. You decide to lean into that idea. In the kitchen, you show it a simple task. You open a low cupboard and take out a cloth. The Capuchin watches your hand on the handle. You wipe the counter, then hand the cloth to the monkey and tap the surface. It presses the cloth down clumsily at first, dragging it in short strokes. The motion smears more than it cleans, but it keeps looking back at your face, checking, adjusting. When you clap softly and nod, it repeats the motion, more deliberate this time. Look, you think, it's helping. It learns doors frighteningly fast. By the second day, it knows that handles turn. By the third, It can open the fridge if you forget to latch it. You walk in once to find it sitting on the bottom shelf, both hands buried in a container of leftovers, tail wrapped around a bottle. Drawers are puzzles. It loves puzzles. It slides them open with quick, efficient pulls, inspecting the contents. Cutlery tray, dish towels, rubber bands. It takes what interests it and drops the rest on the floor. It isn't just moving blindly. It's testing categories. This opens, this pours, this bounces, this breaks. Sometimes the line between helping and hacking blurs. You show it how to carry small objects from one room to another. It takes the role seriously for a while. Remote to the couch, sock to the laundry basket, mail from the floor to the table. It watches your approval like a gauge. Then one day, it takes the keys you hand it and quietly decides they belong in the bathroom sink under a slow drip of water. Its sense of order isn't yours. In the evenings, it climbs onto the back of your chair while you sit at your desk. One hand rests on your shoulder. The other explores whatever you're holding. Pen, phone, notebook. It wants them all. When you try to type, it presses keys, fascinated by the way letters appear on the screen. More than once, it closes a window you needed with a precise tap of the touchpad. It pays attention to your face in a way the other monkeys never did. When you laugh, its body loosens. When your voice sharpens, it freezes, lips pulling tight before it looks away. If you move too quickly, it leans back, then creeps forward again when you soften your shoulders and voice. Because the capuchin is not just clever, it is strong. You notice it when it hangs one-handed from a door frame, tail used as an extra brace. A few days later, it grips your wrist a little too hard in its eagerness to reach something you're holding. It isn't trying to hurt you. It simply doesn't know how breakable you are. Food becomes a negotiation. You try to feed it at regular times. It has its own ideas. If you are eating, it wants to be part of it. It climbs into your lap at dinner, reaching for your plate. When you push its hand away gently, it makes a low, frustrated sound and reaches again, faster. One evening, when your attention slips for a second, it grabs a piece of food off your fork and shoves it into its mouth, eyes fixed on yours. When you react, voice raised, hand moving too quickly, it flinches and shows its teeth in a tight grimace that is not quite a snarl and not quite fear. The moment hangs between you. Later, when it finally sleeps in the big enclosure you built, curled around a blanket with one hand still resting on the door, you find yourself mirroring it on the outside, fingers on the latch, listening for every shift and sigh. You realize, with a dull weight in your chest, that this is supposed to be the easy part. This is still only the beginning. Days with the capuchin begin to smear together. Every morning you wake to claws on metal and bright calls from the enclosure. You open the door and the small body comes out like an inspector, checking windows, testing handles, peering into every space you thought you'd already made safe. You clean up the same chaos in slightly different patterns. The capuchin is always learning, just not what you hoped. It learns which cupboards you forget to latch and which doors don't quite catch. It learns how far a window will give if it leans and twists just right. It does not learn to relax when you leave the room or to sit still while you rest. Its mind was built for a noisy forest full of other bodies, not for the soft corners of a human home. One evening, the line you've been walking thins. You're at the stove, back turned. The capuchin is on the counter, eyes on your hands. It has already had its carefully measured meal. Still, when you raise your fork, You hear the quick scrabble of feet. A hand reaches toward the food. You block it with your arm. The reaction is instant. A sharp sound, a flash of teeth, a fast, hard grip on your wrist. The pressure is one heartbeat away from a bite before you pull back. Both of you freeze. Its eyes are wide. Your own pulse is hammering. It doesn't understand why your food isn't its food, why your flinch feels like punishment. The mark on your skin is small, but it changes the shape of the room. That night, your searches change. No more tricks to teach a capuchin. Instead, sanctuary names, primate rescues, stories of other monkeys who grew from bottle-fed babies into powerful, frustrated adults in rooms too small for their minds. You read how often aggressive just means normal behaviour in the wrong place. When you finally make the call, the voice on the other end sounds tired and kind. They ask about diet, space, history. They ask, gently, about biting. They are not surprised by your answer. There is paperwork, a fee, a date. On that morning, you line a crate with soft cloth and set it on the floor. The capuchin watches from the top of the bookcase, body tight, tail hanging still. It knows crate shapes now. Crates mean travel. Crates mean loss. You put a favorite treat at the back and step away. For a while, it runs its usual loop. Door frame, curtain rail, chair, your shoulder. As if routine alone could keep the day from changing. Eventually, curiosity wins. It drops to the floor, circles the crate, taps the wood, peers inside, then slips in. You close the door. The crate rocks in your hands. A thin call rings out, built to travel through trees, not hallways. Outside, a small van waits, engine idling. The person who takes the crate holds it like something both fragile and dangerous, and talks about tests, quarantine, and slow introductions to a group that already lives there. As they slide the crate into the back, the capuchin turns its head and meets your eyes through the gap. One heartbeat of dark gaze, full of everything you tried and everything you couldn't make right. The door shuts. The voice cuts off. The van pulls away. The sound of the engine shrinks and disappears. Inside, the house is suddenly too quiet. Extra latches hang on doors. Cords are bundled out of reach. Your ears wait for the scrape of claws on metal, the rattle of a handle turning. Nothing comes. You take the enclosure apart piece by piece. Rope down, perches unhooked, blanket folded and held a moment too long because it still smells of fur and fruit and sharp animal musk. When the big cage is gone, a clean rectangle on the wall shines like a missing picture. You sink onto the rug and let your eyes rest on nothing. No remote in the wrong room, no keys in the sink, no fingers on your sleeve. Asking and asking, you lie back. The ceiling blurs. Sleep doesn't drop. It tilts. The weight of the air shifts. Somewhere between one breath and the next, the color of the light changes. The smell reaches you first. Warm, green, a little sweet, like sap and crushed flowers. When you open your eyes, you are not in your house. You are standing on a narrow wooden walkway high above the forest floor, bare feet on worn boards, a rope handrail along one side, open air on the other. Around you, leaves rise in layered greens. Insects sing on a thin, steady note. And just ahead, clinging to the rope with long, delicate fingers, no bigger than your hand, a tiny monkey is watching you. Pale face framed in a soft ruff of fur. Dark eyes too large for its skull fixed on your movement. A tail longer than its body hangs in a loose curve. twitching when you shift your weight. It could vanish into the leaves with one jump. Instead, it stays where it is and takes one careful step closer, nose lifting to catch your scent, eyes unblinking. If you reached out, your fingers and his fingers could almost meet. You stand still on the narrow walkway. The tiny monkey on the rope keeps you in its gaze for a bright moment, as if deciding whether you are part of the forest or just another strange branch. Then it moves. Its hands and feet loosen and it hops to a nearby trunk, claws gripping bark in a way your fingers never could. For something so small, it climbs with absolute confidence, zipping up the vertical surface until it reaches a cluster of branches just above your head. From there, its world opens. You see more of them now. Another little body appears from behind a curtain of leaves. Then another, tails looping, voices trading quick, high notes like glass tapped with a fingernail. A family, not a crowd. A pair of adults, older siblings, tiny shapes clinging to fur on backs and bellies. This is not a forest of giants for them. It is a village built at their scale. They sleep wedged into tree hollows and tangled vine baskets. They wake with first light when the air is still cool and the insects are slow. You've dropped into their morning. Close to you, the first marmoset edges along a branch as thick as your wrist. It pauses to bite at the bark, not to eat it, but to open it. Tiny teeth scrape in quick strokes. It works the same patch until a pale wound opens. You can smell it faintly from where you stand, oozing plant sap, sweet and a little sour. This is the food that doesn't run. Marmosets are gum feeders. Tree trunks are their pantry. While larger animals search for fruit and chase insects, these small bodies come back to the same trees, carving wells into the bark. Sap beads and dries. Over hours and days, they return to lick the hardened gum and knitted gum, pressing their tongues into the grooves they made. Others in the family join in. One adult takes over the scraping, while another licks at an older wound. A youngster leans in too eagerly and is pushed aside with a firm hand and a chatter of scolding notes. Even here, with food that can be shared, there is a rhythm of turn-taking and argument. Above you, the different roles are easy to see if you stand and watch. One animal always seems to be looking outward, eyes sweeping across the green. Another stays closer to the cluster of youngsters, keeping a hand on a tail or back whenever the little ones get too bold. Twins cling to a parent's body as it moves, small faces pressed into fur, occasionally lifting their heads to sniff the air, as if learning the forest one breath at a time. Their calls change with their tasks. Soft contact notes pulse between them as they feed, tiny "I'm here" signals that keep the family stitched together, even when leaves hide bodies from view. When one jumps a wider gap, the sound sharpens. When someone finds a new patch of sap, the call is brighter, more insistent. You feel how close everything is, how fast. The distance between safe and too far is only a branch or two. A youngster that wanders more than a couple of tree widths away is pulled back with sound and motion. A tail is caught, a shoulder grabbed, a body hauled gently but firmly toward the center of the group. On the forest floor, predators move slowly. Up here, the danger is in the gaps. The walkway helps you follow as the family shifts to a neighboring tree. You match your steps to their movement, boards creaking softly under your weight while their claws make almost no sound. Sunlight pushes higher through the leaves. The air thickens. Insects rise in small dancing clouds. The menu expands as the morning warms. Between sap licks, adults dart out to snatch at passing insects, pinning them with quick hands and neat bites. A youngster tries and misses. An older sibling drops down from above, catches the same insect, and eats it with the smug focus of someone who has just proved a point. They are not random bundles of energy. Every movement links to two needs: stay fed, stay together. When they rest, they do it in contact. Mid-morning, the family bunches along a single broad branch that overhangs a small creek. You hear water moving below, but cannot see it through the leaves. The marmosets tuck themselves into the curve of bark and vine. One with its back pressed along the trunk, another curled beside it. Twins wedged in the angle between two limbs like seeds in a pod. Tails drape across each other without anyone needing to ask. Even half asleep, they stay tuned to the family frequency. A shifting weight, a change in breathing, a twitch of limb or tail ripples through the group. Eyes crack open and close again. Hands adjust their grip. Someone grooms a patch of fur on a neighbor's neck, teeth and fingers working through tiny knots. You are close enough now to see the fine tremor in their sides with each breath. From this distance, it is hard to imagine any of them alone. Hard to picture one of these tiny bodies in a cage by itself, or in the corner of a bright room, waiting for a human voice to be enough company. You stay on the walkway and let the family forget you. They drift back into their rhythm. Adults trade places without thinking. One scraping a new patch of bark. One sliding closer to the clustered youngsters. One climbing slightly higher to watch the leaves. When they travel, they move as one. A small body goes first, crossing a gap in two quick jumps. Others follow, claws testing bark, tails held out as balancing lines. Twins cling to a carrier's back, tiny hands sunk deep into fur. The boards curve along the hillside, sometimes bringing you level with their branches, sometimes just below. Where the path bends near a trunk, you hear tongues at sap wells, teeth on bark, the whisper of small hands parting leaves. Sometimes one of them looks at you. A pause, a head tilt, eyes lingering for a heartbeat. Not begging, not asking, just checking. Dangerous, irrelevant, or background. Each time they turn away again, back into the net of tails and familiar voices. They range a little farther for food, then pull close again when the twins get restless. They stretch along sunlit branches, then retreat into shade when their small bodies have had enough. Their safety net is made of memory and attention, each animal tracking where it is and where everyone else should be. You feel how fragile that net is when another sound creeps in at the edge of hearing. At first, it hides inside the usual forest noise, a low, irregular hum with a faint, metallic rattle. The marmosets notice before you name it. One adult freezes mid-lick, ears lift, tail tightens. Its contact call sharpens, pinging through the leaves. The twins' carrier presses closer to the trunk, showing more bark and less soft body to the open air. The sound resolves into what it is, an engine. It cuts off abruptly somewhere below, replaced by human voices. The family compresses. Branches that held one monkey now hold two. They don't bunch into a single knot. They need exit routes, but the space between them shrinks. Heads turn toward the sound. Contact calls change shape, forming a web of here, 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 while the forest's usual script is rewritten beneath them. You move with them toward a thicker cluster of trees. From the walkway's corner, you see flashes of color between the trunks. Cloth, plastic, the pale oval of a face looking up. The newcomers carry sacks. Rope, something that looks like a narrow net. The marmosets react. They pull higher, out toward thinner branches that won't hold human weight. Bodies spread slightly, creating more angles, more options. One adult keeps glancing toward a trunk with a deep hollow, a sleeping place, but doesn't move. To jump too early would be to show the best refuge. One of the humans takes a small container from a bag. Even from above, the smell reaches you. Strong, sweet fruit, concentrated and unfamiliar here. The person sets it on a low branch and steps back. Another lifts a device you recognize, camera or phone. At first, nothing happens. The marmosets stay high, calls thin and fast. Then, one of the older youngsters edges down, nose flaring. Food is a strong argument in a small body. It descends another branch, then another, glancing back each time, while no one quite dares to call it back. The human stays still, hand on the trunk. Eventually, the youngster makes the final jump. It lands on the bait branch with all 4 feet. The fruit is in its hands almost instantly, stuffed toward its mouth in frantic bites. Sap wells don't smell like this. Forest insects don't taste like this. The net drops. For a second, branches and mesh and monkey are one tangle of motion. The youngster shrieks, a sound so sharp it seems to cut the air. The family explodes upward, bodies arrowing into the canopy with a storm of tails and calls. The voices that answer the shriek are not human words. They are high, piercing cries from the adults. The twins' carrier calling so hard, its whole body jerks with each sound. Terror and alarm pour into the space between trunks, but no branch can carry those calls down into the net. Hands on the ground work quickly. Mesh twists. A small body is bundled, then transferred into a waiting crate. Wood, wire, the smell of fuel and sweat and fruit. The cries from inside are muffled now, but they keep coming, in bursts that make the adults above shiver. The crate goes onto a shoulder. The humans start back the way they came. The engine coughs to life. As the sound dwindles, another stretches thin across the canopy, the family calling into the space where their youngster should be. Soon enough, even that will fade. Sleeping spots will be reassigned. Sap wells will still be carved and licked. The forest will go on. But somewhere far from these trees, one small body that never chose to be anything but a marmoset is already on its way to a place where the branches are made of furniture, and the only other primate within reach is you. There is a knock, a brief exchange at the door. You sign something without really reading it, because your attention is on the sound. A faint, restless scrabble from inside a box that's too small to be furniture and too heavy to be empty. You carry it into the living room. The crate is smaller than the others were, lighter. It shifts in your hands with quick, nervous movements. When you set it down on the rug, the room feels enormous around it. You open the latch. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then tiny fingers hook the edge of the gap, and a face appears, pale, round, framed in soft fur, eyes too big for the skull. The marmoset squeezes through as if the crate itself is reluctant to let go. It emerges as thin limbs, long tail, narrow body. You could almost circle its chest with your thumb and forefinger. It lands on the rug and freezes there, head turning in small, sharp motions. The house must feel like a giant hollow tree with the walls cut open. Light from the window, air that doesn't taste like leaves or sap, detergent, dust, the ghost of cooked food in the fabric of the couch. The marmoset makes a soft, high sound. It spins once on the spot, hands flexing, tail curling and uncurling. Then, with a sudden decision, it climbs the nearest vertical surface, you. Tiny hands and feet dig into your clothes, claws pricking through. It runs up your leg, across your hip, finds the seam of your shirt and follows it to your shoulder. One hand catches in your hair. The tail curls around the back of your neck. From this height, it can see more. It presses close to your jaw. Breath warm and fast against your skin. Eyes scanning the room in quick darts. Every new object is stared at, tagged, filed. Lamp, curtain rail, bookshelf, doorway. It murmurs a series of contact notes under its breath, like someone counting in a language you don't know. You had imagined something like a pocket pet, small, easy, happy to be held. What you have is a tiny, anxious primate, trying to build a whole social world out of one human body and four walls. When you move, even slightly, it tightens its grip. You walk slowly to the kitchen, feeling its weight shift with every step. On the counter, fruit waits in a bowl. You peel and slice, fingers clumsy compared to the neat precision you saw in the trees. The smell draws it forward. It leaves your shoulder in a single hop, landing on the counter. Hands grab at the brightest piece first. It eats like something trying to fill more than its stomach. Quick bites, tongue pushing, eyes flicking back to you, as if checking whether this is allowed. After food comes exploration. The marmoset moves along the counter edge, testing every surface with its hands. Metal sink, tile backsplash. The tap becomes a branch, the dish rack a cluster of strange, sharp leaves. It pauses to dig at the corner where the countertop meets the wall, as if expecting sap to ooze from the join. When nothing comes, it leaves a mark anyway, a smear of damp from its gums, a trace of scent rubbed from its chest onto the corner of your kitchen. It is wiring your house into its map, one touch at a time. Back in the living room, the scale of the space becomes a problem. Furniture that looked reasonable to you is a canyon system to a body this small. The distance from couch arm to coffee table is a serious leap. The gap from curtain to bookshelf is an airless space that could swallow it if it misjudged. It solves this the only way it knows how, by staying close to the tallest, warmest, most predictable object here. You. If you sit, it is on you. Shoulder, head, chest. If you stand, it climbs. If you walk, it rides, adjusting its grip with every step. When you try to set it down on a soft blanket you've arranged as a safe spot, it clings harder, tiny fingers hooking into your sleeve, pulling itself back with surprising strength. Being put down feels too much like being left behind. The high, questioning sounds it makes if you step out of the room follow you down the hallway. They sharpen if you take too long to answer. When you come back, its body vibrates with relief and complaint in equal measure, pressing itself against your hands, your face, your neck. You start doing small things one-handed, making tea, checking your phone, tidying the room while it moves with you, always finding a new patch of your clothing to grip. The house is still mostly intact. A few small holes where claws caught in fabric. A line of tiny scratches on one table leg where it tried to dig for sap. A damp spot on the back of a chair where it pressed its chest, rubbing its scent in slow, deliberate strokes. It looks, from a distance, like it's going well. You have a tiny monkey that eats from your hand, rides on your shoulder, clings to your hair and your collar. It is everything the phrase finger monkey promises in a thumbnail image. You are only just starting to feel what it costs to be the only branch it trusts. The cost shows up in small things first. You try to make a cup of tea. The marmoset clings to your shoulder, then your head, then the cupboard door as you reach past it. Every time you lean away from the stove, it leans with you. When you step back, it scrambles higher, pressing itself against your neck as if distance was something you invented just to frighten it. You go to the bathroom and close the door for 30 seconds. The sound it makes when it realizes there is a barrier is thin and piercing, a needle of noise pushed under the crack. Tiny hands scratch at the wood. When you open the door again, it launches at you with such force that you stagger, claws digging, chest heaving, heart going so fast you can feel it through your shirt. You stop shutting the door. At night, you set up a small cage beside your bed, lined with soft fabric and a warm lamp. It is generous by pet shop standards, a single tree for a creature that once had a forest. When you place it inside and turn out the light, there is a moment of stillness. Then the calls begin. They are not the same bright contact notes you heard in the trees. These are sharper, more frantic, bouncing off the walls instead of leaves. The marmoset throws itself from perch to perch, tail lashing, chest pressed to the bars, rubbing its scent and its fear into the metal. You lie awake, hand on the cage door, feeling the vibration of every landing. Eventually, exhaustion wins for both of you. It sleeps hunched in a corner, tail wrapped around its own body as if trying to be its own troop. You sleep in pieces, waking to every rustle. In the morning, its voice is hoarse, and its eyes stay on you like you are the only safe branch in a sky full of gaps. You try enrichment. Branches in pots, hidden food in cardboard tubes, favored cloth hung at different heights. It explores, because exploring is what its body is built for, but the circuit always loops back to you. If you stay in the room, it will play. If you step into the hallway for more than a minute, its world collapses. One afternoon, you test how far you can stretch the invisible cord between you. You leave it in the cage with fresh branches and food and move to the next room, sitting just out of sight. You count breaths. At first there is only movement, the sound of small feet on wood, a rustle of leaves. Then the calls come, short, sharp, insistent. When you don't answer, they lengthen into something that sounds like panic dragged out until it frays. You last 6 minutes. When you go back in, the marmoset is clinging to the side of the cage, chest heaving, eyes blown wide. There is a smear of blood on one perch, where it has bitten its own tail without meaning to, trying to bite through the bars of a world that won't open. It presses itself against your hand as you unlatch the door. The guilt is a physical thing in your throat. That night, your searches change again. Not finger monkey toys or bonding with marmoset, but stress behaviors, self-injury, cortisol. You read about animals who pluck their own fur in rows, who spin in circles until they fall, who stop moving when the only social contact they have is a human and a schedule that cannot replace a forest. You find sanctuary names again. These ones use different words. Kalitrashid, family groups, no breeding, lifetime care. They explain entire devoirs, careful paragraphs, that they are always full. You send a message anyway. The reply takes a few days. In that time, the marmoset hardly leaves your body. It eats perched on your wrist, sleeps under your chin, rides your shoulder from room to room, leaving rub marks wherever it presses its chest. When the answer finally comes, it is not a simple yes. It is a list of questions: age, diet, veterinary history, how long it has been alone, how it reacts to being separated from you. Even briefly, You type carefully, feeling the weight of every answer. You do not write, "It screams when I shower." You write, "High distress when out of sight." They tell you there might be space. Not immediately, they write, but soon. We have a small group of marmosets already. Introductions must be slow. There will be costs, they warn you. Money, of course. And also the cost of giving up a creature that clings to you like you are its whole sky. The date is set. On that morning, you bring out the smallest carrier you own. You line it with the cloth it sleeps on most, the one that smells like both of you now. The marmoset watches from your shoulder, claws sunk into your shirt. When you open the carrier door, it hesitates. It knows boxes now. Boxes mean motion and fear and new air that doesn't smell like trees. You lift your hand slowly, letting it smell your fingers, then lay your palm flat on the cloth inside. For a long moment, it presses its body flat to your neck. Then, inch by inch, it climbs down your arm, hand over hand, tail dragging. It steps into the carrier and turns immediately to face you, both hands on the edge of the door. You close it gently. The carrier is so light, you're afraid of jolting it with every move. On the way to the door, you can feel every shift of its weight through the thin plastic. A turn, a pressed palm, a small thud as it moves from one corner to another. In the car, there is no screaming, just occasional soft contact calls, as if it is asking the space around it to answer. The sanctuary is quieter than you expect. Not rows of cages, but tall mesh enclosures. Trees planted in deep soil. Beams and branches set high so small bodies can move the way the forest taught them. The air smells of leaves and fruit and disinfectant. A compromise between wild and safe. A staff member takes the carrier from you with both hands. Up close, you can see how practiced their movements are. One hand steadying, one hand soothing, voice pitched low and even. They talk more to the monkey than to you at first. A running murmur of reassurance that doesn't promise anything it can't keep. Quarantine first, they explain as you walk. Health checks. Time to hear others before they touch. We go slow. They've all had a lot happen to them before they get here. You stop beside an enclosure. High among the branches, small shapes move. Not many. This is not the wild, but more than one. Tails loop. Small, high calls pass between them. Too soft for you to separate into notes, but enough to stitch a net of sound in the air. Not this group yet, the staff member says, but something like this, if things go well. You sign what needs signing. The papers are practical. Transfer of ownership, veterinary consent, agreement that this is permanent. Your name is on only one side of the arrangement now. On the other side are words like family group, no breeding, lifetime care. When you look up, the carrier has been set on a table in a quieter corner. Through the small window, you see one eye, one hand, one curve of tail. The marmoset is pressed against the door, chest moving fast. It can hear other voices now, faint, familiar calls from animals it hasn't met yet. You touch the carrier once, fingers flat against the side. For a moment, the marmoset presses back, palm to palm through the wall. Then the staff member lifts the box and turns away, carrying it toward a space you are not allowed to enter. You watch until it rounds a corner and disappears. On the drive home, your shoulder feels wrong without the small weight on it. Your shirt is marked with tiny pools where claws once held on. The house will be easier now, quieter, cleaner. The absence walks beside you all the way to your front door. You wake up in your own bed. No crates in the hallway. No claws in the next room. Just the familiar weight of your blanket and the ordinary smells of your life. Laundry soap, faint dust, a trace of whatever you last cooked. For a moment, the monkeys are still here with you anyway. If you close your eyes, you can step back into each world in turn. A tamarin family in a sanctuary grove, small bodies moving between branches, hair like wild crowns catching the light. A day that began in cautious grooming and ended with a box that was never part of their forest story. A spider monkey troop crossing the canopy in long, confident arcs. Bodies stretched between sky and earth, the forest floor so far below it may as well be another planet. One gap in their pattern, where a body used to be. A squirrel monkey that turned your living room into a circuit board of shelves and rods and door frames. Energy ping-ponging from couch to curtain rail to cupboard. A tiny, frantic search for a troop that doesn't exist between your four walls. A capuchin in a village square. Hands moving as quickly as its eyes. Learning every trick humans teach it, and a few they never meant to. Later, the same hands in your drawers and on your keyboard, sorting your world into categories. This opens, this pours, this bounces, this breaks. And finally, a marmoset so small it fits along your collarbone, trying to build an entire social universe out of one human heartbeat. 5 monkeys people dream about as pets. 5 lives that make more sense in places where the furniture is made of trees. You lie there and replay the pattern. Wild space, human home, and the cracks that open between them. How each animal brought the same question into different rooms. What happens when a brain designed for a forest is asked to survive in a house? You've seen some of the answers. In chewed wires and broken ornaments, in sleepless nights and hoarse morning calls, in the way your own mood bent around theirs, your days reshaped by feeding schedules and cleaning routines, and the constant invisible labor of being a one-person troop. You've also seen how easy it is to believe the fantasy at first. The thumbnail version. Finger monkey, house helper, tiny shoulder pet. A tidy list in your head that leaves out everything with weight and teeth and grief. Now the countdown looks different. 5. A tamarin that only makes sense when its family is close enough to touch. 4. A spider monkey, whose real home is 3 stories above the ground. 3. A squirrel monkey whose play is really survival practice. 2. A capuchin, clever enough to learn your habits and strong enough to hurt you without meaning to. 1. A marmoset so intensely social that alone with you can still feel like abandonment. Outside your window, whatever city or town you live in goes on with its quiet routines. Somewhere, there are people typing best monkey for a pet into search bars, seeing the same pictures you once saw. You can't reach all of them, but you can do one small thing from this bed, in this moment. If this long, slow story helped you see these animals differently, or helped you drift a little closer to sleep while you learned, then a quick like on the video, a comment, or even a subscribe helps more than you know. It tells the strange, restless systems behind the screen that you'd rather spend time with honest stories than with thumbnails that stop at cute. If you feel like it, you can even tell the comments which team you're on now. The monkey as pet you once imagined, or the monkeys belong in the wild or in sanctuaries you've just walked through in the dark. There is no quiz, no judgment, just a record of a mind that traveled. For now, you don't have to go anywhere. You've already crossed sanctuaries and forests and living rooms and village squares without leaving your pillow. You've watched 5 different bodies try to fit into a human home, and 5 different homes fail to become a forest. In your imagination, the Tamarin family reshapes itself around a smaller troop and keeps moving through the branches. The spider monkey finds new paths across the canopy, the group, closing its gaps as best it can. The squirrel monkey, the capuchin, and the marmoset you met in boxes and bedrooms end up, if luck and humans allow it, in places with more trees than walls and more voices than yours. Your own room is quiet. No scrabble of claws, no high contact calls, just the steady, ordinary noises of whatever world you really live in. A fridge hum, a distant car, a neighbour's door, the soft shift of fabric when you breathe. You've seen what it costs to try and turn a wildlife into a pet. You've also seen how much softer it can be for them and for you, when love means letting forests and families do the work houses can't. If your eyes want to close now, you can let them. The monkeys know where they are, and you, finally, know where they belong.